Welcome back to SuperString. Today I will show you an awfulness, secret film from 2009, named Orphan. Spoilers ahead. Look out and fare thee well. Kate and her significant other John stroll into a medical clinic since she's in the process of giving birth. She moves wheeled away, as John stays behind to sign her in. Right away, Kate begins dying. She awakens in a working room, encompassed by clinical staff, however her significant other isn't there yet. The entire circumstance feels abnormal and alarming to her when the medical attendant tells her that her child is dead. Kate can barely handle it. John comes in and begins shooting the birth, as though everything seemed okay. The attendant gives her the baby. Kate is shouting and abruptly, she awakens in her bed. She gets up and goes to the bathroom, checking out at the scar on her stomach. She takes a tablet. The following day, Kate is at psychotherapy, where Dr. Browning makes sense of that bad dreams as those are an ordinary reaction to the injury of stillbirth. Kate contemplates whether the bad dream was about that or about the way that she will take on a kid soon. She figures she probably won't be prepared. Kate lets her advisor know that she was thinking about getting some liquor, to which Browning answers that interestingly, she didn't buy any toward the end. Connecting with the reception, the specialist tells her that eventually she needs to choose if she will proceed with it. Kate goes to get her hard of hearing little girl Max from school. She's driving her home, however when she moves from a stoplight occupied, she nearly purposes a mishap. Afterward, Kate is seen playing the piano and making music. She gets aggravated by some clamor she hears, so she heads outside and sees that Max is tossing a b-ball on the divider. She shouts at her to stop and the youngster apologizes. John gets back with their child Daniel and them three mess about with the b-ball. That evening, Kate is taking care of Max when she requests that she read her story. The story is about the kid that kicked the bucket. Max inquires as to whether she'll get another sister. Before Kate hits the hay, she takes another tablet. She gets into bed with John and they discuss the reception. She pursued her choice, they will proceed with it. Some time later, they are seen jumping into a halfway house. Sister Abigail meets them forthright and advises them to glance around. Kate stays on the principal floor, taking a gander at the young ladies playing, and John goes to the subsequent floor. He hears a young lady sing and strolls inside the room where Esther is painting. She recounts the work of art she's making as Kate and Abigail stroll into the room. John presents them and them three keep on talking. The young lady says that no one has at any point conversed with her before on the grounds that she's unique. They appear to like her. They converse with Abigail about taking on Esther. She lets them know that she was initially from Russia and that individuals who carried her to the US kicked the bucket in a house fire. However, with everything taken into account, Abigail feels that the young lady is wonderful. Kate concurs. After 3 weeks, they get her from the shelter and express farewell to Abigail. In the vehicle, Kate shows Esther gesture-based communication. They arrive at the house and Max is eager to see them. Esther acquaints herself with her immediately, asking Kate the amount she can hear. She tells her that she can hear barely enough, so she can peruse people group's lips. Once inside, they're met with grandmother Barbara and Daniel. That evening every one of them give her invite gifts, with the exception of Daniel, who as of now appears to be envious of the young lady, particularly when she gives John an enormous thank you embrace. Daniel goes outside to the treehouse with his friends, and they glance through grimy magazines. Esther and Max play in the snow as Barbara and Kate discuss Max and about her arrangements to begin instructing again whenever Esther is settled. Barbara appears to feel frustrated in Kate. There's a situation unfolding that evening as Kate prepares to hit the hay. Esther awakens and goes to Max's room. John and Kate are having intercourse when there's thump on the entryway and it's the two young ladies requesting to rest in their bed. Esther needs to rest close to John. The following morning, they're all prepared to take off from the house and get to school when Esther descends the steps in an extravagant dress, provoking different youngsters to snicker. Kate needs to ensure if Esther truly has any desire to wear that to school, and the young lady tells her that nothing out of sorts in is being unique. Kate lets her wear the dress. Afterward, she is being invited in class by her educator when one of the children ridicules her. That day, Max and Esther play on the frozen lake. When Kate runs out, it isn't permitted to holler that doing that. All the while, Daniel plays with a paintball weapon and shoots a bird. Esther and Max stroll over, and he's actual bombshell, yet Esther gives him an enormous stone, advising him to finally give it some closure. He would rather not make it happen, so she does it for him. Afterward, Esther goes to scrub down. Kate goes into her space to take care of her clothing, yet tracks down an old Bible caught in a cabinet. She doesn't hear Esther watching out of the restroom as she glances through it and tracks down a photograph of a man inside. At school, Daniel's friends are ridiculing him due to Esther, so he pushes her books over. At the point when she goes to get them, a young lady from her group thinks that she is Bible, and as they battle for it, it falls on the ground. Esther gets it, however the young lady goes after her choker, calling her a pup. Esther shouts. Afterward, Kate is showing her how to play the piano. Then, at that point, she gets some information about the episode at the school, however she would rather not discuss it. Kate gives her a scrapbook, which she has previously begun for her, when Esther gets some information about the child she lost. Kate tells her what occurred, as she shows her the roses, where they dispersed her remains. After supper, thinking the children are dozing, Kate and John have intercourse in the kitchen. Esther unexpectedly shows up. The following morning, Kate goes to converse with her about it. Esther appears undeterred as she paints, saying she is familiar with it and utilizations the F word. Kate and John discuss it later, and she figures they ought to take her to an advisor. John believes it's going overboard to take the youngster to treatment for one filthy word. John takes the young ladies to a recreation area and keeping in mind that they're at a swing, one of his neighbors approaches play with him. In the interim, Esther's domineering jerk comes into the jungle gym too. Esther's consideration is split among her and John's trade with the neighbor. The domineering jerk is really terrified of Esther and pays special attention to her as she goes to play in the palace. She needs to go down a slide when Esther pushes her abruptly, breaking her leg. Max sees her get it done. At coffee shop that evening, John converses with Esther about it. Max affirms the story that the girl slipped. Before they eat, Esther asks, and Max does likewise. She even comprehends communication via gestures better compared to Daniel. He offends her and starts calling out to her when the guardians contribute. He runs off, furious and reviling. John puts a lock on his treehouse as a discipline. Afterward, Kate is at the store with the young ladies when Sister Abigail calls her. Esther won't converse with her, yet Kate proceeds. She moves to one side and educates Sister Abigail concerning all that has been going on, while Max pays close attention to her and describes her words to Esther. That evening, Esther plays the piano impeccably amazingly. She inquires as to why Esther professed not to know how to play, and the young lady answers that she did it for her advantage. That evening, Kate and John squabble over Esther and their contention twistings wild. Esther hears them in the other room, satisfied. At some point, Sister Abigail approaches the house. She converses with the guardians about Esther, feeling that there may be some kind of problem with her. She records a couple of things that she could have done previously, such as harming different kids. The young lady hears all that and goes to get Max, advising her that she wants to help her so the mean woman doesn't remove her. Kate feels that Abigail may be onto something, however John believes she's blowing up. Kate proposes they take her to an advisor and he concurs. In the meantime, Esther advises Max to track down the keys to the treehouse, however rather she utilizes them to get a firearm out of John's safe. She removes the projectiles from the gun, leaving one inside. She focuses it at Max, startling her appallingly. As Abigail goes out in her vehicle, Esther takes Max to a scaffold, telling her that they will terrify her so much she won't ever need to return. As the vehicle draws near, she pushes Max onto the road and Abigail nearly hits the young lady, twirls and crashes the vehicle. Abigail finds Max crying when Esther hits her with a mallet. She educates Max to assist her with getting Abigail off the street. They roll her down, however she's as yet alive, so Esther polishes her off with the mallet. Both of them go into the treehouse, where Esther conceals her ridiculous garments and the mallet. She lets Max know that they'll send her to imprison excessively only for aiding her. Esther then tells her that she adores her. Daniel sees them move down the treehouse, yet Esther sees him as well. That evening, she comes into his room with a surgical blade, compromising him not to say anything. The kid pees himself. John and Kate take Esther to see Browning, who converses with them about her as she holds up outside. The specialist expresses that nothing bad can really be said about the young lady, however that Kate is truth be told the issue. She thinks Kate feels lacking as a mother and is taking it out on Esther. John concurs with her thinking. At the point when they return home, Kate gets a call from the halfway house and she's informed that Sister Abigail hasn't returned since the earlier day. The police look for herself and find her body where Esther left it. A cop is seen conversing with Kate and John, saying they have no suspects. Esther is in her room turning the illumination of her aquarium on and off, showing a frightful artistic creation she has made of the house and the family. Kate looks online for data about upset kids and shows her discoveries to John. He contradicts her once more and she lets him know she won't be seeing Dr. Browning any longer. Kate is stressed over what Esther's identity is and says she'll contact the shelter in Russia, where Esther came from. At the point when she settles on the decision, she figures out that there are no records of her past to her appearance in the US. The following day, John goes to awaken Esther to take her to the dental specialist, yet since she would rather not go he vows to reschedule. They go through the day painting together and Esther tells him that she believes that Kate could do without her. In the interim, Kate is taking different youngsters to school and gets some information about her. They lie, saying she's finished nothing off base. That evening, Esther comes in the kitchen telling Kate she has a present for her. She gives her a can of roses, picked from where Kate's little girl's remains were dispersed. Kate flies off the handle and gets her, yet John tells her it was his issue. That very evening, Esther goes to the carport and breaks her hand. Back in bed, she calls for John, letting him know her arm damages, and when he checks it, he sees it's been broken. They return from the specialist and he's wrapping her up their bed when Kate comes in. He goes up against her, however Kate says she didn't snatch her that hard. Afterward, she goes to an alcohol store and purchases 2 wine bottles. She becomes somewhat inebriated, however tosses the remainder of the open wine bottle down the channel. Kate drives the children to school the next morning. Daniel leaves the vehicle in his sack tears, so when Kate goes to help him, Esther places the vehicle in drive with Max still in there. Kate pursues the vehicle until it's at last come by the snow. That evening, Dr. Browning is in their home and Kate swears that she put the vehicle in park and that Max is covering for Esther. John shows her the subsequent wine bottle which Esther found. The specialist tells her that she held a spot for her in a recovery community, yet Kate informs them her side of the story concerning the wine. They don't trust her about the wine and about the mishap. John believes she's being manipulative and allows her 7 days to seek help or he'll leave and take the children. In the interim, Esther lets Max know that she'll shoot her mother assuming she tells on her. Afterward, Daniel goes into Max's room and she educates him regarding Abigail in the treehouse. He says he'll get the stuff from the treehouse, yet Esther hears him. Kate gets up during the evening and slips into Max's room. Abruptly, Esther turns the light on. They go this way and that, yet Esther shows her the journal she'd been keeping, telling her she'd understand it. She alienates her, however Kate doesn't get bulldozed. The following day, Kate calls the shelter once more and when she doesn't figure out anything, she goes to get Esther's Bible. She finds it concealed in a rich toy and tracks down pictures of men inside. She sees the word SARN Institute on it and quickly looks for what they mean on the web. She calls the number she finds and they tell her that the institute is really mental emergency clinic and not a halfway house. In the interim, Daniel escapes the house to get the stuff from the treehouse. Esther follows him there and begins pouring fuel once again the proof, then lights it and keeps pouring fuel over Daniel. She locks him inside the consuming treehouse. He requires his mom, however she's too bustling researching Esther. Daniel gets on the rooftop, sobbing for help. He falls onto a wooden shaft, yet slips and falls on the ground as Esther watches him. Out of nowhere, Kate sees the fire as Esther goes over Daniel to kill him with a stone. Max drives her away and Kate shows up before she can do much else. Daniel is alive. They're all in the emergency clinic when the specialist comes in and illuminates them that he has a genuine neck injury and probably won't recollect what occurred. Esther is stressed over that. Kate lets John know what she learned about Esther, yet he's as yet not persuaded. While they are contending, Esther goes to Daniel's room. Max knows what's happening and pursues her. Esther begins choking out Daniel with his pad as Max goes to get her folks. The alert in Daniel's room goes off and the specialists resuscitate him. Kate goes up against Esther and slaps her. Orderlies snatch her and steady her. She misses a significant call. Afterward, Kate awakens and quickly gets some information about Daniel. She asks John not to let Esther close to Max as she remains for the time being in the emergency clinic. That evening, Max takes of her portable amplifier and her father wraps her up. Esther comes in and gets the guide when she expresses goodnight to her. John goes down to the parlor and becomes inebriated. Esther strolls ground floor, spruced up like a grown-up and sits close to John, who doesn't have the foggiest idea what's going on. Esther begins kissing him, however he withdraws. He makes sense of that he doesn't cherish her the manner in which him and Kate love one another. John advises her to go to her room, yet she tells him not to converse with her like she's a youngster. He says he will call the shelter tomorrow about her. Esther goes to her room and cries. Meanwhile, Kate gets a call from a specialist in the SARN Institute. He perceives Esther and advises her to get her family out of the house, then to call the police. He tells her that Esther is anything but a young lady, yet that she has some sort of chemical problem that makes her seem to be a youngster. She is, truth be told, a grown-up lady. Esther was one of the most ridiculously rough patients in the emergency clinic, and when she battled her restrictions, they left scars on all fours. The specialist lets Kate know that she has killed somewhere around 7 individuals. Kate is racing to return home, confounded how she could trick them. Back at the house, Esther junks her room and eliminates every last bit of her makeup used to conceal the way that she's not a young lady. John goes to mind her and tracks down her works of art all around the divider. Kate is calling him as she's driving home, however the power goes out in the house before he can get. She calls the police. John views as a light and glances through the house when Esther wounds him. He's debilitated, however alive, so she continues to cut him until she kills him. Max sees her and she pursues her next. Kate drives so quick toward the house that she collides with it and promptly goes higher up. She finds John, then she understands Max is in a difficult situation and attempts to see as her. She thoroughly searches in her room, however when she doesn't find her goes into the washroom. Abruptly, Esther shoots her. Kate stows away in her room, yet luckily Esther doesn't track down her there since she's hitting beyond the window. Max stows away in the nursery and Esther is coming for her there. As Kate sees her from the glass rooftop, Esther shoots after her once more, then finds Max and shoots after her as well. Max escapes as Kate breaks the glass rooftop, falling on top of Esther. A second after the fact, Max awakens Kate. She takes the weapon and gets her, abandoning Esther. She ventures into the woodland. The police shows up and goes into the house, yet Esther isn't there. Out of nowhere she's pursuing Kate and Max with a blade. Both of them fall on the frozen lake and they battle, with Esther tirelessly pursuing Kate. Max gets the firearm and fires, loosening things up. The two of them fall inside and battle until Kate debilitates Esther. As she's slithering out, Esther gets her once more, beseeching her not to let her bite the dust, but rather Kate kicks her back in the lake.